So, as stated in the last post, this week will be a bit different, since I have to talk about two important topics. First, Addenda Grammatica, or Grammaticae Prostecae. Maybe I will actually call it Grammaticae Techne, because it is meant as an addition, hence the name Addenda Grammatica. Yet, as you will see in this lesson, it might as well be seen as a proper language book or grammar book as well, which would make the first one Grammaticae Techne Perites Attices in Dialecto, a fantastically uncomplicated name. As of now, I have it under Addendum Grammaticum de Dialecto Attica, but this might change due to its comprehensive nature, as I will explain this week. As of now, I'm not entirely sure what to name it. Maybe I will even change the word order to have it more akin to the original Greek titles, but we will see. The second point is my language acquisition technique, or LAT. This is indeed my own work in the field of linguistics, something I have been working on for quite some time and still working on it. Over the course of this week, I will be talking about this in more details. Basically, reading my own small paper, since I explained the basics there already. But something I did not write in this little paper, and is kind of the reason why this week is a little different, is the part with the, again, as of now called Addenda Grammatica. And the reason why I call it that way, and again, still unsure about the naming, is because it was originally thought to be just an addition to the language books I'm planning, which I'm still do, by the way. At some point, I will be making proper language courses. Hence the name Addendum Grammaticum. But since I'm doing this not just for one language, but planning to do this for every language that I'm planning on studying, I needed to change it to Addenda Grammatica there, and then simply the Latin name for that language in the ablative case, since there requires the ablative, which is the name I had for this for a few weeks now. But seeing how comprehensive the first finished chapter of the first book, which by the way is the Attic flexion, so conjugation and declension of the Attic dialect, is over 260 pages long. Mind you, not book pages, but Word document pages. In book form, that would roughly be 480 to 510 pages. And this book is still not finished. There are still more chapters to write. As of now, there are 2 more chapters: syntax and vocabulary, including proverbs. And I do not know how long those final chapters are going to be. But with all of that, I think I should briefly explain what the Addenda Grammatica even are. So, again, initially I'm starting out as a rough overview for conjugation and declension forms, combined with some bits of grammar and a basic vocabulary list, with only having the basic bits, which means a few dozens of the most important words. This became very quickly a lot more. Now, it is meant as one book, or multiple, that capture basically, kinda, the entire language. The idea is that when you go through this book, you will have all you need to know for being able to properly speak, write, listen to this language. In fact, so much so that with the combination of an additional dictionary, not written by me, but with even more vocabulary than I will include in my books, which by the way will be around 2,000 words, as I have planned it right now, you will be able to reach a high proficiency. I thought about B1 to B2. In some cases, like for example Japanese, I will have to have at least 2 books, because one entire book will be reserved for the kanji, which I already wrote, which would be certainly too much to put in a single book. Each language will be a bit different in this regard, of course, which brings me to the next point. What is LAT Addenda Grammatica? So, generally speaking, if you have seen my announcement video, and chances are you haven't, I have come up with 11 points for each language. Basically, a rough overview of the basics for each language. Those need to be adjusted for the different kind of languages. For example, some have flexion, like the Attic dialect or Latin, while others do not have flexion, or at least not to that extent, for example, Japanese or Chinese. But all still can have the same semantic sentence, as each of the languages does have equivalents, while not 100% the same due to some languages having a more nuanced vocabulary. For example, the Attic dialect has a flexion system, Japanese has a particle system. Now, since I only talked about this in the announcement video, so if you're interested in the following, just have a look there. Here is just an overview of the 11 points. First, cases, if there are any, that is, otherwise the equivalent. Same goes for verb forms, conjugation and declension. But then, again, for all, syntax, morphology, determiners, articles and pronouns, if they exist, that is. Some languages do not have articles, for example. Agreement and concord, which mostly is then for languages with a flexion system. Negation, particles or function words, pragmatic and discourse grammar, and, very important, phonology and accentuation. Technically, vocabulary could be seen as the 12th point, since it goes hand in hand with the other 11 points though. I did not include it here. Now, the Addenda Grammatica will all follow the same kind of structure, more or less, which is based on my own preference for language acquisition, which might differ from general textbook teachings, or what you hear or read from a lot of other content creators. So, beginning with phonology and orthography, which means pronunciation and writing system, and this will always be the first point. In cases where we have hundreds or more of characters, for example Japanese, Chinese, or even Middle Egyptian, the point of writing system will be gradually progressed, rather than starting with it. You will learn the writing system by learning new vocabulary, which is something that will happen anyway, naturally and automatically as we progress our journey through the languages. And of course, I have a few tricks and shortcuts for languages with a large writing system as well. Sometimes it really feels like I actually know what I'm doing. So, looking at the 11 points, here, obviously we only have phonology and accentuation. Next is the flexion, or the equivalent, starting with the verbs, then the nouns. By the way, in regards of the nouns, during my studies at the university, we use the term noun for everything that can be declinated. So what you would call noun, we called substantive instead. So that we did not have the need to list all of the word classes that fall under this. And here I must admit, pronouns can be a bit annoying to learn. So, looking at the 11 points, this part includes quite a lot. Cases, verb forms, conjugation, declension, morphology. Although, Here, word classes like adverbs, conjunctions, or other inflexible word classes would then be part of vocabulary. Again, something that happens anyway by progressing through the other points. And this is of course a huge part of the syntax, because we need water for our dry river, aka vocabulary for the example sentences. Then we have determiners, articles and pronouns. Negation. This one is a little bit tricky to place, because it is here and in syntax. Similarly with particles and function words. And pragmatic, which is mostly due to formality in this category. Then we have syntax. After the flexion is finished, or the equivalent, building sentences becomes much easier, as we not only already can, at least ideally, use all the forms, at least to some extent. Thus, this part also serves as practice for part 1 and part 2. But we can also expand our vocabulary. As for the 11 points, this one basically includes all of it. All of the points are coming together right here. That is, if you would speak the sentences as well and write them. Otherwise, orthography and phonology are not really playing much part in here. Reading would still require the orthography. And the last point is vocabulary. After going through the previous 3 parts, this one was the only one left. Although we are learning hundreds of words and how to use them in the previous 3 parts, there are still, obviously, a lot more words to be learned. And I was thinking of having a list at the end of my Addenda Grammatica, which will most likely be in the following way. Starting with basic vocabulary, then more specific vocabulary, in 2 sections that is. One for the basic vocabulary and one for the more specific vocabulary, which then will be actually subdivided into the different categories. For example, in the case of the Attic dialect, we could have something for philosophy, something else for medical, technical terms, and so on. But all of these sections will then be further subdivided into word classes, and inside there, if I can do it, alphabetically ordered. And after the more specific vocabulary part, at the end I was thinking of adding proverbs as well. So, as you can see, the structure is pretty clear and can basically be applied to all languages, with just a few adjustments here and there. And of course, sometimes a chapter for a language is a little bit longer. For example, the Attic dialect flexion system compared to the Latin flexion system, because there might be a lot going on. But finding the right sources will be one of the more tricky parts, since I want to include even rare forms. Again, for example, the Attic dialect, here I did include the dual forms, which at the time of the Attic dialect were already in decline and basically not really used. As for the vocabulary, of course, I can only include what I can find, so if I do not find what I'm looking for, this section may be less impactful, so to speak. Luckily, for the Attic dialect, I have a source with thousands of words, which means a lot of work for me, but I guess that's okay. By the way, this also works very well with my LAT, which was the basis for this structure as well as the 11 points of the languages. Over the course of this week, you will see how well this fits together, and the more languages you're acquiring, the easier it gets.